Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and on this week's episode, we have another new release actually. In fact, it's not even this week's episode because this and the last one are both brand new releases, which means they're both going up pretty back to back with each other. But so you get two this week, so hey, present, which is actually really generous given that October's just around the corner and we're going to be doing like 10 episodes a week. That's an exaggeration, but you know, like lots of extras in a couple of weeks' time. But anyway, so we're doing Mandy. This is a Nicolas Cage starring film. Panos Cosmatos, if I'm saying his name remotely right, is the director of this. And had you seen his previous film? Because he's made one movie before this called Beyond the Black Rainbow, which I have seen.
I have not seen the whole thing. I feel like I started watching it late one night at 1 o'clock and just passed out.
Because I want to set this
short
up.
Answer, no, I haven't.
I want to set this up. I love Beyond the Black Rainbow. And that's a movie that when I showed it to other people, they all hated it, right? It's a movie that's so weird and art house and full of bright lights and weird symbolism and synth music. It's a movie that most people, that if you show it to them, they will hate. But those of us who are film nerds who get off in this kind of stuff loved it. I loved it. I loved that movie. So the fact that when I really, obviously the trailer for Mandy was really interesting looking, and then when I learned it was him directing it, I was like, oh baby, okay, right, you've got my attention. And then get Nicolas Cage being crazy on top of all that, yeah, okay, I'm into it. So we're going to start spoiler free as we often do, and then we'll give you a warning in the middle before we go into spoilers. That's what we're going to do. The premise of Mandy is really simple. There is a weird cult of people. There's also this weird demonic biker gang, which we'll save that mostly for spoilers, but they exist. Let's just say they exist. But the weird cult decide they want to kidnap Mandy, which is Nicolas Cage's wife. He plays Red. And they take Mandy. She basically rejects the cult, and as a result they kill her, and from there it's a revenge movie. It's Nicolas Cage is obviously not very happy about this, and as Tim, as someone who's about to be married, I think you probably sympathise with this character that his wife has been killed in front of him, so you're like, yeah, let's go kill the bad guys.
Yeah, for the record, I don't stand for that. If someone kills my wife, I'll definitely be out for revenge.
Yes. Of course, my joke there was the idea that you have to be married to understand the motivation that you'd want to kill someone for murdering your wife. But that's the movie. That's it. The plot's really simple. It's a revenge movie. The execution of the movie is anything but simple. So, it is without no further delay. I will ask Tim the question. Tim, did you enjoy Mandy?
Oh, baby, did I. Yeah, I thought this was phenomenal. I was lucky enough to see it on the big screen last week.
Oh, here we go. Nicolas Cage was there. He was wearing leather pants. It was so cool. I'm a hot shot, my guy in Hollywood. Blah 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 blah.
Well, that was very cool. I wasn't gonna bring that up. Well, maybe later, but just the idea that this movie absolutely looked and sounded just phenomenal on the big screen. And yeah, like you said, it's a very simple movie. It is very art house. It almost feels like two different movies, because the first half feels like it's very slow and kind of dreamlike, and it just seems to be more about the story about these kind of two lovers. And then the second half, it still kind of maintains that same quality while also spiraling into just this crazy gore fest revenge movie. I mean, which
to put it simply in terms of thematics, is the simple ideas here is that it's all tranquil and peaceful until Nicolas Cage snaps, and then it becomes frantic, and then it becomes quick paced, and then it becomes erratic, and weird cuts, and all this weird quick flashes of symbolism and all this other nonsense.
And he is so perfect in the role too. It just I love Nick Cage, but you don't always know what you're gonna get with him. And this is that really good Nick Cage. Where yeah, give me more. Even though he's obviously acting super weird and crazy, but in the way that you just absolutely love. But I think he also pulls off the quiet stuff too.
No, he does, but there is like two moments in this movie that we'll get to in spoilers where he did make me laugh because it was Nick Cage being crazy Nick Cage, and
Okay,
I
I
don't
think
mean it
I
in a
know
bad way,
which
but I can't help but laugh at crazy Nick Cage because it's kind of a thing at
So,
this point. It's a meme at this point. Is Nick
yeah.
Cage being
So
Nick Cage?
so let me ask you, because I haven't seen Beyond the, like I said, Beyond the Black
Yeah.
Rainbow. Like I haven't watched all of it, but I do want to go back and watch it now. But are there moments of levity in that? Because it's not like there definitely seem to be a few beats in this movie that are played for humor, and like it, it's not like, like super silly wacky humor, but just like, it's kind of humorous in like
Mm.
the moment or the situation. But is
I
there anything like that in his other movie?
I don't actually remember any humor in the other movie. No, it's got a very similar kind of like art house tone with all the synth and the symbolism and the slow moody atmosphere. It's got all that stuff, but it's
Like the
not so much the humor.
Okay, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm still
Yeah.
obviously interested, but it's just really interesting to me how it all gels together, and it's the I'm just enthralled in the beginning just by the cinematography, and like the colors in the movie are so amazing. It's just beautiful to look at,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
the scenes
yeah,
where the entire room will just be bathed in red or green, and there's no reason for it, or why it's suddenly red or green.
yeah,
It just is,
yeah.
and you just go with it because yeah, why not? Like, sure, let's make it pretty.
So then for the record though, how do you feel? I'm getting a sense of how you feel, but I don't know. Maybe you'll still surprise me. Did you like this or?
Oh, Timmy down the well in the dark, not knowing what's going on. Hey, it's always a Timmy down the well, right? This is just we've established this in the past.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's always Timmy fell down
There's
the
that.
well, right? That's your legacy, right? I don't know what the
Yeah.
Peter legacy is. I don't know if there's like a stereotype for who Peter is. I feel like there's extremes in every end of the spectrum. There's
The guy that eats pumpkins.
I hate pumpkin. No, pumpkin pie is like one of the worst abominations to mankind. Um,
I like pumpkin pie. Definitely. I don't like pies in general though.
mm,
I think on the pie spectrum, it's a little better than most. I think.
yeah, I don't like apple pie. Any sort of pie that has like fruit and pie were not meant to go together. Pie to me is something with meat inside it. So you know,
Oh yeah, meat pies are good.
yeah. But yeah, that's just it's a cultural thing more than anything else. But uh, I mean, the short answer is yes. I freaking loved it. But
Okay.
the more
You had
complicated
words for a
answer,
second.
yeah, the more complicated answer is, um, like it's a confusing film, not in its plot, but just in what it's trying to say about certain things. And there's one scene in particular that I think we're going to sit and analyze and try and figure out later. And
Okay.
it'll be an interesting approach to it. And it's like it's one of those films where I'm like, I feel like there's meant to be things that it's saying, and I've not heard the director speak about this or Beyond the Black Rainbow, but I feel like he's going to be that dude. He's going to be that guy who says, "Well, I'm not going to tell you what it means. I want the audience to have their own interpretation of what it means." And I appreciate that. I love David Lynch. I love Stanley Kubrick, and and like any director who's ever said that. Like, sure, they're usually really smart and good, enjoyable dudes in terms of their work. But
Mhm.
I get that feeling. It's like, okay, right, but it's the kind of thing where with this movie, I could totally buy that there is no meaning. Like it's just supposed. Like the point is that none of this actually means anything. The crazy cult who believe all this shit and they're this like, and it is kind of related to actual Christianity, but it's obviously this weird extreme version of it where they believe in all this other stuff. And Jeremiah is this cult leader who's like really extreme, and all his followers like follow him devoutly as if he's the second coming. You've got all this, and like this could all mean something or absolutely nothing, and that could be the point that they're just insane
Mhm.
and they believe all this, and
Yeah.
that's it. But yeah.
Yeah. I think like people might think that um like they might have more assumptions about the movie than what is like I think they might be surprised at how straightforward that the director saw it, and again, not to brag, but yeah, I did. You know, he was at
Oh
the Q&A
God.
that I went
Okay.
to, but like, but the yeah, he didn't like come across like as a like a stuck up like snobbish art guy that was trying to say like, oh, like this represents this represents that. Like he actually seemed more like like a straightforward dude. Like he seemed like a regular nerdy guy like us, and like he and he was just saying stuff like how his favorite movies growing up were like Evil Dead 2, and a lot of the stuff like Kevin Smith was the moderator or whatever, and like when he'd ask him
Mm.
questions like, oh, like what do you think of when you did like this scene or something, the guy like a lot of times he just kind of be like, I wanted to do that scene because it was cool. Like I think maybe people might be surprised at how straightforward
I
it
feel
is.
like that's almost weird there, that he just thinks this is normal, this movie. He just thinks, no, this is just a straightforward movie. Like why don't other movies look and sound like this, where they just kind of cut to
Yeah,
these weird symbolic images? Like,
yeah.
I can respect that. I can respect that he's a lot more candid than that. But no, it's full
But
of it's
I can
yeah. There you go.
well,
Mm.
oh, just I mean, this is definitely one of those movies where I mean, like you said, it is like kind of more of a film lovers kind of movie. It's definitely not something that I would show everyone, and if someone told me that they hate it, like I wouldn't necessarily be surprised depending on the person. Like like I really loved it, and it's actually like it's been almost a week since I've seen it, but it still like has stuck in my mind just some of like the visuals and stuff in it.
Mm.
So I yeah, I loved it, but I definitely understand like how yeah, this is not something that's for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's downright hypnotic. It's a hypnotic movie that
Yeah,
you're just kind of sucked into. And
and it's funny like how like some stuff that maybe in another movie we might criticize more, like if there's a plot thing or something that we're like, oh, I don't really know about this, this doesn't make sense, why are they going for that. It's kind of funny how like stuff like that you could maybe like let go a little bit more in this, where it is like, yeah, like the story is really not as important as like just like being wrapped up in just the look and the sound and the feel
well,
and the atmosphere of the movie.
I think that's why it's important that the core story is actually really simple, because you don't have to worry about it too much. Because
Yeah,
the point of the movie is clearly to be about how it approaches the story, not what the story is itself. It's about how it treats these different scenes and how, it's a filmmaker's movie, I suppose. Like to sound pretentious, I guess, for a minute. Um,
it, in this movie I think that's it's apt to say.
yeah, like it just like it's full of all these things where it'll just cut to these bright colors. It'll cut to shots of planets. It'll cut to close-ups of eyes. It'll do all these things. It'll just be sitting there as synth music plays, and it'll be kind of sweet. And then later on, it'll be really like this red pulsing like bass line under the overall scene where the cult leader's like just spouting prophecy nonsense about how important he is, and like you'll just have scenes like that,
Yeah,
but it
it, it
works.
kind of it kind of like in a weird way almost feels like a heavy metal fantasy movie. like like there's like weird like kind of like I feel like a lot of like imagery of just like sorcery kind of
Hmm.
stuff, like like it kind of fits in that like with that book that she's reading in the movie.
Or
But
even
then
just
there's like like
she keeps wearing t-shirts that are she's got like a Black Sabbath t-shirt
yeah,
on at one point, and she's got a what was the first shirt she was wearing? There was another band. There was another
Motley Crue,
yeah, it was Motley
was it?
Crue. Yeah, it was another band of
Yeah,
kind of that rough era.
yeah. But then there's stuff like there's like animated sequences, and then like just like the designs of the someone like the demonic characters. It has like
Yeah,
a very like there are parts of it just, oh, this feels like a heavy metal album cover
it
like come to life at points.
it's an artistic vision, for better or worse. You could hate this, but I think the one thing you can't say about this is that this is not one man, or one, in this case it's a
Oh
man,
yeah, definitely.
one
Yeah,
person's just unadulterated, like uncompromising vision of a movie. It's not been
yeah,
tampered with. No one like stepped in and said, "Hey, you should make this more palpable for the mainstream audience." No, no, no.
yeah,
This is just his thing, and this is always more exciting to me, because there's this is a really obvious thing to say in a lot of ways, but I feel like this bears repeating for people who do like just mainstream movies. I think it is worth repeating that when you make a movie by design, by committee, how can we sell the most amount of tickets to the most amount of people, right? you have to make it work for a lot of different types of people. You have to make it work for everyone to an extent, or most people. And that by its nature is less interesting to me than something that only, like, something that's only going to have a cult following. It's only going to be like this, like, 5 to 10% of the audience, even less than that, really. I mean, if you think about the population of the
Yeah.
world, but like, but it's for those people. For those people, they will love this. It will be completely, utterly, and everything, like the passion, and it'll be uncompromising. It'll be just that one idea, that one direction. Whereas you look at something like I don't know. I'm trying to think of two examples on either side of the spectrum of the same concept to really compare it. Like I mean, take Avengers, right? Which is not. This is not. I love Avengers. That's a great movie, but take Avengers and then take something like Unbreakable, which is not going to appeal to as many people as Avengers, but it's very focused. It's very specific, and it's one person's artistic vision. It's not really compromised in any way. They wanted to do their take on this, and they didn't like stop to try and make it more palpable for everyone else. And to me, that in many ways is very exciting and very interesting, and I like that passion that goes into something like that. Not to say there's no passion in Avengers, which is why it's maybe not a great example, because Avengers is actually a good movie. Maybe a better example would be like a big budget movie where it's designed by committee, and they try to
Like Justice League.
Justice League. There you go. Yeah, like they try to fix it and they try to make it work, and it didn't. It didn't. But like this, it's like, yeah, this won't work for a lot of people. But because of that, because it will only work for the small group of people that it will work for, but for those people, it's like really working. Like it's like off the charts how much this appeals to them and how much it speaks to them as a viewer, as a consumer of art. To again sound pretentious, but like it works for them. And so I love that it's just, no, this is one person's insane vision, and they did not compromise a single thing. They just went for it.
Oh yeah, it's it's definitely like unforgiving. Like there's doesn't really seem like at any point that they're like, oh, is the audience gonna like this or or not? It's like, yeah, very clearly just one person being like, yeah, this is what I want to portray, and that's one of the things that's like interesting about it, is just having that like kind of singular like focused vision.
Yeah, and obviously
really interesting.
That can backfire if the people with the vision don't have talent. Again, you always like to bring up The Room with Tommy Wiseau, but that was one man's artistic vision, but it went down the toilet in the best way possible because it's hilarious. But that's where it can fail, but that's why the genuinely entertaining terrible movies tend to be the ones that are just one person's vision, where they really believed in what they were doing, they really cared about it, there was passion in it, even if it ended up being terrible. Whereas obviously this, I think, works out because I think Cosmatos is actually really talented and knows how to achieve what he's going for. It's this weird hypnotic, it's almost like every scene is kind of that scene from 2001 where he's going through the void. Like everything feels inspired by that to some extent. That mixed with some like 80s sort of like atmosphere, mixed with some over the top like violence and gore, mixed with, I don't know, a bunch of other stuff. But it's definitely his concoction, right? Without any hesitation. So it's good.
And again, I love me some Nick Cage. Like I'll definitely take as much of him as I can get. And again, I loved him in this movie. I loved him as kind of just the quiet, soft spoken, loving husband that was like making like cheesy jokes, and then did like the crazy blood spattered like revenge seeking dude. It was just really fun anytime he's on screen.
Also there's a small cameo from Bill Duke, who I've not seen in a long time. He's he's the guy he goes and gets weapons from in the movie, and he was of course in Predator. He was in Commando back in the 80s. The last time I saw him, I think, was like Battlestar Galactica. He was in an episode of Battlestar Galactica, and that was like 2005, something like that. So it's been a long time since I've seen him in anything. But that was just a cool little, I like him. Nice that he popped up. But I think we'll move into spoilers. We'll dive in now. I think I think if you're someone who's going to hate this movie, you've probably gotten that impression from everything I've said so far.
And I think the trailer is a pretty good litmus test. Like if. Because I think when we watched the trailer, we were like drooling. We were like, oh man, I can't wait for this. If you watch it and you're kind of like, I don't know, then it's probably not for you.
Yeah. That's true. The trailer does not betray. I mean, the only thing that's different about the trailer maybe is that there is some slower pace sections, which the trailer maybe doesn't show that part of it. But other than
Sure.
that, if you're into the trailer, you're going to be into the movie. It's kind of an honest trailer in and of itself, and I hate that I used that phrase because honest trailers are the worst. But so yeah, so obviously, so Mandy gets killed, and the way that scene is shot is so like. I feel like there's so many scenes in this movie like that you want to like talk about in and of themselves. Like we start with him cutting, chopping down wood, establishing that he's good with his hands and that he uses chainsaws because it's important. But he comes home and like they have this sweet moment with the joke, and they're lying in bed that night, and they're lying there, and he's asking her, they're just kind of like getting close, kind of snuggling, and he's just kind of asking, "Oh, how was your day? What did you do?" And she's like, "Oh, I read that book on the galaxy, on the cosmos." Which I think is important for the themes because there's a lot of cosmic imagery sprinkled throughout. And he's like, "Oh, so you're liking it then?" Well, I was like, "Oh yeah, it's really fun. What's your favorite planet?" He asks her what her favorite planet is. She says Jupiter. And I think as dumb as this conversation kind of is, because it's a really basic conversation, although it does end with the glorious, "Oh wait, Saturn's not my favorite planet. Galactus is." Galactus isn't a planet, but he eats planets. That felt like that felt like a really nerdy conversation in a movie like this. I don't know. It felt like, whoa, there was a Galactus reference in my Nick Cage crazy nonsense movie.
I feel like it. I feel like it fits the character though. Like it's not like like it does seem like something he would like, but at the same time, it's also not like I feel like some movies you might get like a super like they would really like nerdify the reference. Like it wouldn't just be like, "Oh, my favorite planet is Galactus." It would be like, "My favorite planet is Galactus, specifically from issue 214, in which he fights the blah blah blah." You know what I mean? Like it like it's not like overly specific, but it's less like, "Oh, okay, this is just like this is the kind of stuff that they like."
It was so unexpected to me that I didn't get that he was making a Marvel reference until he actually said, "Well, he eats planets." I was like, "What does he mean Galactus? Is that like?" Because I thought, "Is that a planet like in a different system that I don't know?" Like, does he just know more about planets than I do? And he's like, "Oh, but he eats them." And I'm like, "Oh, it's a Marvel joke." Okay. Right, moving on.
But it does feel kind of weird now because it's like before, like you would get comic book references, but it would like it would feel more like realistic because it's like it's like, oh, like it's a thing that not everyone knows about or whatever, but real people might talk about. But now it does seem kind of weird now that it's like, oh, are they referencing this other movie universe that I don't know? It's like it's kind of interesting.
To be fair, it's like one of the few things they can talk about now that still proves that they're kind of nerdy because Galactus has not had a proper movie version yet. I mean, yes, technically there was a Galactus in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, but less said about that interpretation, the better. But
agreed.
But if someone started talking about Iron Man now, I would be like, "Oh, that's just pop culture now. Everyone knows who Iron Man is."
Yeah.
But if that was 15 years ago and someone referenced Iron Man, I'd be like, "Whoa, someone talked about Iron Man. That's weird."
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so things have changed in that sense. But as bizarre as this conversation is, as stupid as it is, and just in a sort of little bonding moment, I think it oddly kind of sets up some themes. Because I feel like when she describes Jupiter, she talks about how the storm's been raging for 1,000 years, and I feel like and it could swallow the entire Earth up. I feel like that's kind of what happens to him. This storm, this religious storm of these crazies, not that these people specifically have been around for a long time, but the ideas that they're promoting, the beliefs, the extremism, the craziness has been around for a long time, and he's swallowed up by that. And then when he talks about Galactus, and she's like, "Oh, he eats planets," I'm like, yeah, he becomes Galactus. He eats the planets, if you will, and in the back half of the movie. Like, I don't know. I was thinking about it later on. I was like, that conversation has a lot more meaning to it. Also, I learned something. I learned that Saturn was the first planet we discovered as a civilization.
Oh, that's right.
That's a neat little.
I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, which makes sense because I think in my head I assume we discovered the ones that were closest first, but
you think so, yeah.
But it actually makes no sense that they would, because if you think about it, they're always moving. They're always in rotation of the sun and they all move at different speeds. So of course it's just kind of random which one we found first. In fact, it makes sense that it was one of the biggest. I mean, Jupiter's bigger, but Saturn's the second biggest one. It makes sense that was found early.
Yeah,
and then
I'm
Pluto
always surprised when
last.
I'm always surprised when I'm hanging out with someone and like they'll point up to the sky and they'll be like, "Oh, look, that's like Mars or whatever." I'm like, "How can you tell? It just looks like a really bright star." Like, I don't know, I always think that's interesting.
Yeah, I always get jealous of like movies that are set in like other planets, but they've got like neighboring planets that are so close you can actually see them
Yeah.
like really proper. I'm like, oh man, that'd be cool. That'd be proper. But
It's
I
always
mean,
like a really cool visual.
yeah, and you kind of see that in some of the weird, trippy sequences in this at various points. But so basically, so we spend the first half hour of the movie just introducing to them, and it takes so much time showing their routine and them just lying there talking about stories, because she tells them a story about how her dad made her try to make her kill a bird, and
Oh yeah.
like he made all the other kids kill birds because he hated the birds, because they wouldn't leave the fruit tree alone, and she ran away. She didn't want anything to do with it. And again, it's tied into the idea of like passive, being passive as opposed to being violent, and how he's going to become violent later on. It's tying into things, but the villains are
I think
introduced. Oh, yeah, you go.
I was like, just like in general, there is kind of like a theme of like hunting in the movie. Like you see, like there's I think early on she comes across like a wounded deer in the forest.
Yeah,
Something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Which is
Yeah.
kind of what she ends up, because she's hunted later on, and I think
Yeah.
obviously the idea that he is like her right now, and he is he's not a violent man, but he's going to become that. He's going to be consumed by the storm, if you will, as I was pointing out from Jupiter. But the villains are introduced. The cult are they're just driving, and they see they see Mandy walking a lot. Jeremiah, the leader, just sees her and is like hypnotized by her beauty, and
Mhm.
then we see them later on, and they're at like a motel or something, and he's like, hey, send my second in command in. So you're sending brother Lucas or whatever his name is. And he comes in and he's kneeling down next to him. And he's really close. He's almost like they're going to kiss. They're so close, like their faces.
Yeah.
And he's like, brother, I need that girl will be past. That woman, I need her. I can't live without her. I need you to go and retrieve her. He's like, consider it done. And there's this really great moment where he pulls out this stone, and the entire screen turns green, but only in the close up of the stone. It goes away when it cuts back to the two shot. And he's like, oh yeah, so it shall be done. And they're like, oh, we need to give an offering. It's like, oh, that fat one. We'll give him. I don't like him anyway.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. But this is where I got some of the craziness from like the villain and how he was going to act, because there's a moment in this scene where when he's talking to the first woman before he says go and get him, he asks her to do something, and she says her response is literally the phrase "okay," as in she's agreeing she's going to go do it, and he gets angry at her because she's took the time to say okay instead of just immediately doing it, and he goes, "I told you to get him now," and he's really like over the top, and it was like, oh shit, okay,
Yeah.
this is where the craziness is coming in. I'm getting the vibes off this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you can tell it's like so well done the way the bad guys are set up, because like really like there's nothing that crazy about them. They all kind of look like regular normal people, but just the way they're filmed and the music and everything makes them feel so menacing. Like just that first shot when they're in the car and they pass by Mandy walking, and they
Yeah.
all are kind of like looking at her, like you get such a sense of like tension, and like something bad is going to happen to her, and but like it's just crazy like how well that it's conveyed just all through just like the camera, the music, and the lighting and everything.
Oh, absolutely. And so basically, when he says, "Okay, consider it done," he takes two of the cronies, and they're waiting out in the van. And I naturally think, oh, they're waiting near her house or something like that, to grab her. Instead, they're there to make an offering to a higher power, which turns out to be this insane, almost Cenobite-looking biker gang. And again, everything goes red. There's all this smoke and red light coming through the smoke as these bikers appear. One of them's really spiky.
So-
One's got a creepy mask on. They're all very different.
So now, one thing I wasn't completely sure about. I only seen this once, but I want to watch it again. I'm not sure if I missed something, but are these actual demons, or are these just like they mentioned? I think that like these were the people that took like the bad acid or whatever, and they kind of went crazy.
It's kind of open to interpretation if there's
Okay.
actual supernatural, like cosmic entities at play here, or if it is just no, they took some bad LSD and they're all psychotic now. But I kind of like that interpretation, because I like the idea that the cult, the religious nut jobs, think they're this higher being, but they're really just other crazy people. and they just
Yeah.
put them on this pedestal. There's something I like about that. There's just everything about this is just completely psychotic. But he offers the stone, and they offer like blood, and then they offer the sacrifice of the fat guy, and then we get a scene where they help them break into the house and, like, you know, tie up Nicolas Cage with barbed wire, and then they've got Mandy. The whole
And
thing
then
is
this is
trippy as
great,
shit.
like with the
Yeah.
yeah, and just their like when they're sleeping, and like even before anything bad happens, just like the shot of them sleeping is so great because it kind of has this like these big windows in the background. It almost feels like they're kind of in the forest, like even though they're in their bed. But then yeah, once everything starts going down and like the lights are flashing,
Yeah,
you know, and
it's
then these
got
creatures are appearing.
a strobe effect. It's like a slow
Yeah.
strobe, and my cat's like knocking my monitor around. There's a slow strobe, and every time it like flashes, there's like someone else is in the room, and they're all moving forward. It's got a very kind of very imposing sort of presence towards the
And
camera.
like yeah, and it feels like something that could easily have been like done very poorly like in a different movie or something, or something that might have been annoying where it's like, oh, like what are they trying to do? But again, here it's just used so like effectively, and it just, you know, looks so cool and gives like, you know, these creatures like already like look so kind of menacing and scary. But yeah, just like, you know, when you factor in just all this like light and effects and stuff, it really just amps it up, and you really get scared.
Yeah. No, it's real good, and they kind of leave. They leave the cult to their own. You know, like, okay, now you've got them. We're gone. This is your thing now. And they drug Mandy. They give her like an eye drop, and they sting her with
Kind of an insect.
yeah, some kind of big insect.
Mm.
And they bring her through to the main room where everyone in the cult is, and the leader Jeremiah is up, and he's got a robe on. Which immediately I went, okay, we're going to see his dick. I had a feeling. The second I saw what he was wearing, I was like, he's going to open that. And he does. He does. And it kind of just adds to the scene because his character's like this, you know, he's basically talking a lot of mumbo jumbo about how God chose him for a higher power and how he was there for him. And ultimately, this scene, and what I kind of like about this is like how much about this is really just about his ego, because he thinks he's important.
Oh, yeah.
He is taking to believe that he is important because of what he believes he's been told from God, or how he believes he's been chosen. And when he kind of presents himself and says, "You're going to join us. You're going to have the honor of bedding me," because, you know, that is an honor to anyone, basically. And she laughs at him. She actually gets downright demonic at one point in the way she sort of laughs at him and speaks at him. That they put this demonic effect on it, and not only is the screen completely red and bathed in red light, there's like a almost a haze effect where she's kind of ghosting a little bit, where she's like a sort of double of her. And the whole thing is like you're kind of in her head because she's kind of out of it. There's a great moment in this scene where he gets really close up in his face, and it starts to blend both their faces together. So he's talking, but it's kind of her face, and it's so trippy. And then she starts laughing. It gets very demonic, and then he gets so insecure and starts screaming at everyone not to look at him. No, he doesn't cover up. He just starts screaming at everyone individually, like, "Don't you look at me! Don't you look at me! Don't you look at me!" And he gets so erratic.
And it's great because it's like the one thing that you can really do to, like, you know, shake him off his thing is just, you know, like she's basically taking away like all his power, because like all he really has is the fact that he is basically like, you know, touched by God, that he's this like, you know, amazing being. And just the fact that anyone like would dare laugh at him and treat him that way, it's like he's already like someone that we've seen like snap at, you know, the tiniest provocation. And it's just real interesting like to see his reaction you know, in this like thing that you can't even like comprehend.
Because I think if anything, this movie's maybe about this type of guy who thinks everything just belongs to him, and like everything's there for him, and the idea that anyone challenges him is like, oh, he has to prove his worth. He has to, you know. So this is why, you know, he comes out and he has to belittle Nicolas Cage is tied up with barbed wire, and he comes out and he's like, "Hey, you think you two have love? You pathetic human beings. You're just meat. I'll show you what real love is." And the youngest of his cult, this young girl, who earlier on he asked for at the end of the scene before the guy left, and it was just kind of implied that he wanted her for sex, and that was kind of where we left it. He asks her to come over, and he's like, "Do you want to see what true love is? Do you want to see what true love is? Here's true love." And he puts one bullet in the gun, right, and spins the revolver, and obviously it's Russian roulette basically, and he gives her the gun and he says, "Show him how much you love me." and she's crying. She's very hesitant, but she does pull the trigger, and she doesn't die. Nothing happens, but it's like, I'm proving to you that this is someone who really loves me. What you have is nothing. This is true devotion. And it's this really sick thing. And then the rest of the scene is like this really trippy, hypnotic one. No, it's not one shot. It is cut back and forth to Nicolas Cage, but it's largely this really slow motion shot where the characters one by one come out and they carry out like the wife's body, and they've got it in a sack and they burn it in front of them. And I think the most effective part of this scene is when it cuts around all the faces of the cult, and they're all like just sinister and happy, and they're all elated by what they're doing, except the younger one, the young girl. It's not, I mean, she's a woman, but you know, in terms of age, she's much younger than everyone else, and she looks a bit more like horrified by what's happening, which is notable because she's the only one that he doesn't kill later on. He lets her go because he sees humanity in her, but everyone else obviously comes after, but it's just everything about it is so, it's like it's slow motion. It's like it's not even half speed. It's like even less than that. It's like just as he slowly brings her out and sets her on fire, and they just leave him there to die, just to starve basically. But he gets out of the barbed wire and he goes over to the body, and it's actually this really depressing, sad scene as he holds the skull of his wife when it's surrounded by nothing but ash, and it's like, you can't even recognize her now. Like this is depressing.
Yeah, man. The one thing about this movie is it is brutal. Like there's you know, like stuff like that. Even that, like, you know, you don't necessarily see her on fire, but something about the, you know, seeing her writhe in the sack as it's on fire is just like so upsetting. And then
because they could have pulled a twist. They could have told us this was someone else later and say, oh, she's really still alive. Because we never see her in the sack. We just see the sack and there's a person in it. But it's really dark.
And then like and then even stuff like with Nicolas Cage, like, you know, it's not enough that he's tied up, but he's tied up with like barbed wire, and just seeing him struggling, and then just kind of like imagining that, like, well, like, like, is there anything worse that you could like be trying to get out of?
And he, so actually, here's where some of the moments where I said I laughed because of the crazy Nick Cage elements of it kind of come into play. It's when after this scene, he walks back into his house, because this all took place at his house. Like, he was outside, like in the backyard. He comes into his house and he's in, because they took him from bed, he's only wearing a t-shirt and his underwear. And he walks into the main room of the house, and he's in his underwear and a t-shirt, and he's got blood in his hands and a little bit in his face. And he's looking around really confused. And I'm not going to lie, I laughed out loud at this moment because it kind of looked like Nicolas Cage was just confused that he was on a movie set, rather than the character was like, you know, distraught by what just happened. Hello, Nicolas Cage as an old man just walked onto a set and went, huh? What are we shooting today? And that really made me laugh. And then the other thing is when he goes into the bathroom and he tries to like clean his wounds with alcohol a little bit, and he drinks some, he just starts screaming over and over again. And I'm like, this is Nicolas Cage. Okay, we're getting this is
this is like prime Nick Cage. That's great. And then this is like I kind of love this scene. Like, I feel like it's weirdly, maybe doesn't fit the tone of the movie, but in a way, I think that's kind of why I like it, when he's just watching the TV and it's this really weird commercial for this these things called cheddar goblins, which is like this macaroni and cheese, but like the commercial is like so weird and over the top, but it like I don't know, something about it I love. And then just like Nick Cage like watching it, just like, you know, he's just like in such utter shock and like so confused. And it's just like a weird like juxtaposition between this really goofy, silly commercial.
Yeah. And then he gets his weapons, of course. And we even get like this montage of him making an axe. Like, he actually forges an axe.
Yeah.
It's this really badass thing as well. That's really angular and it's like, it almost is unsafe to even hold. There's not even really a proper hilt on it or not even a hilt, just a handle really to hold it, because axes don't typically have hilts. That's more of a sword thing. Although now I want to see an axe with a hilt on it, because I think that'd be funny. But
that would be cool.
But yeah, and he goes hunting, and he finds these, and it's Bill Duke who tells him that he's heard these rumors about the guys who took the acid and they became these bikers, and he goes to find them, and he finds the first one, and then he gets captured, and he escapes his capture, and he's killed a couple of them. I think this where it really gets insane though, is the third one that he fights in the house is the one with the the sword dick, I suppose, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
He's got a blade that's coming from his crotch, and he's watching porn, and Nicolas Cage is sneaking up behind him, but the guy sees his reflection, so he turns around, and it turns into this fight where he's trying to stab him with his crotch blade, and Nicolas Cage is fighting back, and of course he eventually, wins, but...
Yeah, and it's cool, too, that it's like Nick Cage is this, like, big badass, but he's not, like, invincible. Like, he gets a lot as much as he gives. Like, he gets beat up pretty good in this movie, too.
Oh yeah, when he's captured just before this, he's actually, his hand is nailed to the floor. Like he's he's in pretty rough shape. But he's looking around the house. He gets his weapons back, and it's actually just this random house. Like these bikers have killed this poor couple in the bedroom. They're just kind of lying there dead. But he finds a jar of stuff, which I can only assume is the LSD that the bikers had, because he tastes just a touch of it, and he has this vision of a face melting, and then some cosmic imagery, and then he goes and fights the last biker who's like still alive, and this is where it gets really kind of like interesting in terms of like trying to interpret what this stuff means, because the biker just before Nicolas Cage like sets him on fire and then cuts off his head, he says something like "she still burns, she's still burning," and obviously that upsets him, but it's like he wasn't even there for that scene. The biker didn't know they did that. So
interesting.
So the question I have then is like, if this isn't just he's crazy on an LSD, or did the LSD like grant him like, I don't know, visions of a different reality, like the hell dimension or whatever we're talking about here? Because from this point on, ever since Nicolas Cage takes this LSD, he also kind of perceives reality differently. He starts seeing the big cosmic shots of the planets. He's it's just after this he goes to the scene with the chemist, which is, I think, easily the most abstract scene in the movie, because what the hell is he talking about? Where is this place? What's going on? Why is there a tiger?
Why is there a tiger?
Yeah. And the guy like just says a lot of really weird things, like you're the dark cosmos or the shadow cosmos, and like, oh, they've done some bad things to you, so it's to be expected. And so here I have a couple of interpretations of this. One is that none of this is really real, and it's just him on LSD, and he's going nuts.
Okay.
Two, he's on LSD, and it's actually connected him to something where he can see all this crap. Or three, to go along with the fact that Jeremiah thinks that he's the voice or the hand of God, and he thinks he's special because of that, that Nicolas Cage, in a weird way, has actually embraced Satan and embraced hell in order to fight Jeremiah. And it's not so much that the movie's saying that Nicolas Cage is went evil here, it's more that, at least to me, it felt like, no, balance. Like, this is someone, it's not so much that, like, heaven, or God is good and the devil's bad, per se. It's more about balance. And Jeremiah is taking God's, like, ideas to the extreme. And there needs to be an agent of Satan on the opposite side, which is triggered by the tragedy, and then the fact that he takes the LSD and, like, connects to that world, if you will. And the reason why I say that is because when he's talking to the chemist, he looks down at his feet and he sees like all the bugs and stuff on the floor that's not really there, but he says, oh, you can see them, can't you? You can see the true world. So it's like he's seeing like an alternate plane that's always been here or something. I don't know. Again, like, this is me going nuts with interpretations. You could what does the tiger represent being free? Because he frees the tiger in this scene, and that's where I'm kind of thinking, oh, this is where Nicolas Cage really, like, the beast is unleashed. Like, he is connected to this thing and the tiger is let loose. I don't know.
No, I think I think all of that is like pretty fair, and it's like there can be instances where a movie leaves you with a lot of questions, and it's frustrating because it's like what, like, that didn't make sense or whatever. But then there's movies like this where there's definitely a lot of questions, but it doesn't make you mad. It's like it's fun to think about, and it's like it's open to interpretation, but in like a good way.
Yeah, it's all about intent, and it's all about the style of the movie, because this movie, right from the second it starts and we start getting the trippy feeling, this is not a movie that's going to like spell things out. This is a movie that's going to let you think, and it's that from the second it starts. Where there's other movies where they'll kind of pull something at the end that's kind of like, oh, you think of the ending yourself, and it's like, no, the movie wasn't set up for that. You didn't. This does not work as an ambiguous thing. You just didn't have an ending in mind. So after this, Nicolas Cage, he hunts down the cult, And one by one, he kills them. And arguably, it's at this point where he becomes a bit more of a Terminator-esque in the sense that maybe lending credence to the fact that he's now connected to something otherworldly. And he kills the first guy. He puts the handle of his axe, which is also sharp, by the way. He made the handle at the bottom a blade. He stabs one guy in the mouth. He throws it at the other guy's head.
That's a great scene.
It's a very great scene. You just see it flying through the air. And then he fights the guy with the chainsaw. And this is where he pulls out the I don't know, 7-foot chainsaw, whatever it is. It's something ridiculous.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that like the movie opens up with them like, like chopping down trees and stuff, and I feel like we're used to like the Evil Dead kind of chainsaw, but then it's cool that this bad guy brings out this like it looks like some industrial lumber type of chainsaw, and it's like, oh man, this like yearns for such a good fight.
Yeah, and it's good because actually, I mean, even the ending's kind of fun because it actually ends with him pulling him down onto his own chainsaw. So the guy at the end of the scene, he's just kind of lying there, and you don't even see the chainsaw; it's underneath him, but he's just kind of jittering, and there's blood pouring out from under. As fans of gore, there's fun to be had for sure.
Yeah,
on top of
it's definitely like
just on top of the hyper stylized filmmaking, there's gore to be had.
Yeah, I think that's what's really great about the movie. Like I do like the stuff in the beginning, but I don't know how much I would have liked the movie if that's all the movie was. Like, it's possible I still could have liked it, but like, I don't know, I just love that that it's like half that and then half just this really crazy, like stylized Evil Dead-esque kind of movie with just like gore and blood flying everywhere. It like actually feels like real blood. Like you can see like the splatter on the characters, and like
he gets
Cage by the end is just drenched.
Yeah, he gets drenched. At one point, he's lying underneath one of the guys. He's stabbing them or whatever, and there's just blood pouring onto his face. It's bloody as hell. Evil Dead's an interesting comparison because it does kind of have that wackiness to the violence, but at the same time has this completely different tone. That again, it's this like almost like cosmic horror tone whilst he's fighting people with chainsaws. It's a really weird mix of things. Yeah. And it gives it a unique feel.
Like, it's like if Ash like snapped and like was like weirdly quiet and like didn't have any quips or anything. But was just like a brooding menace. Yeah,
he's silent and he's brooding. And after this, when he gets into the building and he cuts off the head of the older woman who's very complicit and everything, there's a lot of great shots of him just walking down like these long hallways with fans behind him, but everything's red and smoky, and it just looks great. Like, it looks really good. And that's the other thing, actually, to mention, the scene with the chemist. That is the only scene in the film that has a completely different look to it, because it's very fluorescent and bright and just very neutral light. Because all of a sudden he's standing there covered in blood, but he's not like in a red bathed scene or anything like that. He's in this bright white light kind of setting.
Yeah.
Very, very clinical.
Yeah. Like it actually feels like, I don't know, in a way like a little more real or something. Like, oh, you're actually like in an actual place now, as opposed to like this kind of, like very like stylized like locale.
Yeah, but would you suggest that the movie's implying that this is the only real scene in the movie and everything else is the fake stuff?
Who knows? I'm like honestly, this is something that I'm really looking forward to, like sitting down and watching again and trying to like make more interpretations, because the first time I saw it I was just like in awe of everything that I didn't really like stop to think like, oh, what does this specifically mean or something. Like it's such like a, especially just like the visuals are so captivating that kind of lose track for that. So this is actually something I will definitely be revisiting, and I'm looking forward to thinking about it a little more.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying hypnotic, because the visuals and the audio just do so much, even before anything else kicks in. But he gets to Jeremiah, and Jeremiah doesn't really stand much of a chance. It's kind of like when Batman gets to the Joker. The Joker's not much of a fighter. Once he gets to him, it's kind of over. But he basically tries to tell him that he's also special, and then he kneels, and he even offers to suck his dick. Like, that's one thing he says, like, please. He starts to beg, he says, please don't hurt me, I'll suck your dick. And then he shifts again to be like, you know what? No, I'm better than you. You bow before me. Get on your knees and bow to me. I am above you. And what I love about this is that it really shows him as a character that he's a complete coward, but at the same time he still has these delusions of grandeur. And it's like he tries begging, he sees that doesn't work, so he's like, you know what, I'm going out believing I'm better than you. I'm going to remind you before I go that I'm better than you. And it just that flipping back and forth really made him an interesting villain to me. And then I think it's why the movie works. Even if you don't want to interpret it, even if you want to say, okay, there's no supernatural things going on, they're not connected to the cosmic horror of it all, or heaven or hell, all of that is completely made up. I think that also works as well, because you have these characters who believe in this stuff, these bikers who they believe are like better than, you know, these things that they should make offerings to, and you have Jeremiah, where it all boils down to he wants to feel important. And people have used religion in this way in the past, where they want to feel that they're important because of how close they are to it, and he uses this for power. And ultimately, the reason why the movie works, if that's what you want to take it as, if you want to take it just as that, is that Nicolas Cage comes up at the end and says, no, you're not more important, you don't get away with this, I'm putting you in your place, you are not special, you've done bad things, and here's your comeuppance, you don't get away with this. And on that level it still works. So that's why I think it works if you think there's actually heaven and hell or cosmic horror at play. It works if you just want to take it as no, this is a man who believed he was powerful and he could take anything and do anything he wanted, and about his comeuppance. It works in both ways.
And what's great is, like, you know, he is like so weak and such a coward and stuff, and really the only power, the only weapon that he has is that he somehow has convinced people that he's powerful. And you see, like, in Nick Cage, like, you know, he's killing, like, you know, every person that believes that of him. So he's, like, you know, systematically taking away all the power that he has, until at the end he's just, you know, like this vulnerable guy that's willing to do anything to get out of the situation, which is it's great to see him just like really like, no, like, I've taken like, you took away, like, you know, the thing that I loved, and I, you know, now I've like taken everything away from you.
It does a really good job of making you want him to die, and it's just the sort of thing where this movie's not about the morality of really being, you know, going for revenge in the real world. It's not that type of movie. If anything, it's more of a parable. It's more of a it's more of a representation of emotions than it is actual. This is what you should do in real life if this happens to you.
Oh, sure.
In that words, and he actually kills him just by squeezing his head. He just squeezes his head until it pops. It's also
glorious.
Yeah, and the final shots of the movie is Nicolas Cage riding off essentially into the sunset. But it's this other world. There's like multiple planets in the sky, bringing back the cosmos, and that conversation about the planets. That's what made me think of the Galactus stuff. I'm like, oh, he basically became Galactus. He ate everyone.
That's good. Yeah,
you know, metaphorically speaking, and he looks over to the side of him, and he sees Mandy sitting there in the car with him, and I'm like, is he connected to this like other plane? Can he really see her? Is this, or is it just a hallucination? Is he just screwed up with the bikers forever now? Is that what we're doing? Like, you know, again, you could read it in a number of different ways. You know, so it's cool.
Let's not gloss over the glorious smile that he has when he's looking at her.
Actually, speaking of his facial reactions, not only is that smile at the end great, when he snaps the neck, I think it's Blade Dick. That's the one he snaps the neck of. When he snaps the neck, the way he like just sort of looks really dramatically, almost right at the camera. After he does it, because he sort of does it really quick, and he's like, and he just sort of looks really dead serious, like straight ahead. That was a great Nicolas Cage expression. That was cracking me up.
So good.
Yeah, so good. But no, like, so I think it has interpretations. I think you can read it a couple of different ways. But even if you're not even doing that, the visuals and the audio, the crazy Nicolas Cage stuff, it all really comes down to, are you going to find a film with this style tedious? Do you like something that's a bit more traditional? If so, then yeah, it's probably not for you. But if you do like something a bit more art house, a bit more abstract, a bit more hypnotic, then I think you're into it.
Yeah, like if you're okay with you know, like less maybe you know, like less plot and jump scares and that kind of stuff, but you like you know, someone really expressing their vision and just, you know, really just, you know, creating a setting for you and letting you just kind of breathe it in and get absorbed into it. Like,
yeah, and
this is definitely that kind of.
Obviously, what happens to Mandy is the real horror of the movie, but arguably an extension of that, the true horror of it, beyond like the what might be like connected to supernatural stuff and God and devil and whatever else,
Yeah.
is the fact that if you just take it, as realistically as possible, they basically turn a man into a monster. They take everything away from him, and it turns him into this true violent killer, and that's the horror of it. Like, violence begets violence, and for people who are claiming to be devout followers of God, they've created their own personal Satan, and so yeah, it's a thing.
Man, it really makes me wish that that like this was the Ghost Rider movie we got instead of the actual
It's
Ghost
funny,
Rider.
actually. You could make some comparisons to Batman. The idea that Nicolas Cage's character dies the same moment his wife does, and this other persona is born, this violent, vengeful persona.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not who Batman is, but just the idea that he changes. Like, there's this new version of him after that scene.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Man, it's weird. Like, it does feel weird to kind of like talk about something because it does feel like so visual. Like it's like there's so much we can describe, but man, it's just one of those things. Like, you really just got to like see for yourself. It's just
It's funny because of its slower pacing, because it really basks in the sort of the image of a lot of the moments. It's actually 2 hours long, despite the fairly simple plot. But for me, it never like dragged or felt like it was,
Yeah. Like I think even if it is maybe a slower scene of just people talking, like just the like style of it and everything, it still like sucks you in. That and hey, I'm I'm someone that can like get bored pretty easily. So
we know.
like the fact that I'm like all in on this, it's gotta say something.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we should probably rate the movie.
I'm gonna go. I mean, I gotta go pretty high for this. Like, I really dug it. Something like I still think about, or we'll get glimpses in my head, and it's definitely something that as soon as the Blu-ray's out, I'm gonna scoop up and watch again. I'm really excited about it, so I gotta give this bad boy a 9. I really dug it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go just a smidge, and just a smidge, 8.5. I think I'm going with 8.5. It might rise in time. Again, this is one of these ones where I think when you watch it again, you think about it more. But everything that's there was super great. Every like the visuals, the audio, Nicolas Cage's performance, the way the plot is handled, despite how simple it is, the gore, everything about it like was really firing on all cylinders for me. And I think it could rise in time, but for now I'm going to give it an 8.5, and I'm going to see how I feel. It's the sort of thing where even before I see it again, I might bump it by the end of the year. I think I want to let this one sit. I want to think about it more for a while.
That's fair. I think you just watched it today too.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've sat on it for like about a week now. So it's like I know like sometimes it is kind of hard though. Like it's like with newer movies, you never want to go like too high right away. You want to give it some time. But yeah, like honestly, like I'm trying to think if there was like something about it that I didn't like even if it was like, oh well, I like most of it, but man, this one scene didn't work for me, or this or that or whatever. And I can't really think of anything that like would drag it down that much for me.
We've not mentioned yet the fact that it has these really weird like chapter headings. There's only 3 of them.
Oh yeah.
They come up in the screen, and it's like each one has a very different font. In fact, the first one that just says like, "Oh, this is like the mountains where they live." It's like the Disney font. It's like this sparkly Disney text that comes up saying "so and so mountains," and it says 1983 AD, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, AD." I'm glad you specified that.
Yeah, there's like weird little touches like that. I love. There's like some animated sequences which I really like. Like I've actually been like really wanting like just like.
All of which are dream sequences, it's worth pointing out. They're all dream sequences to animate stuff.
Yeah, and it just really made me crave, like, man, I would love to see, like, a full-on, like, like, serious animated horror movie. I just think that would be so cool.
Yeah.
As, like, a dude that grew up loving cartoons and horror and stuff, I'd love that.
They're all dreams that Nicolas Cage has about his wife. Every time he sleeps after it happens, he has these, like, weird animated visions of her. And it's part of his inspiration to get up and fight, if you will. So no, Mandy's very, very good. So by all means, let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments. It is worth mentioning patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here. Of course, because it is September, this is actually the last episode we're recording before October, because we've got one ready for next week, and then we have a lot of episodes planned for October. But Tim's getting married, so Tim's actually gone for a few weeks. You won't notice the absence because there's tons of episodes ready to go up, but this is the last one we're actually recording before October. So it's worth mentioning that there are 3 votes this month. Patreon always gets a vote every month, the $5 tier, but they're getting 2 $5 votes this month, plus there's a free vote for everyone. There's a link in the description for everyone to go and vote on an anthology movie for us to do next month in October. And then the patrons get 2 other votes. They get the franchise starter vote, which is 3 different franchised movies, where we'll do the first one in October, and then we'll continue onwards, like we've been doing with Friday the 13th and stuff like that, past October. And then the other vote is classic Universal monster movies. So those are the votes coming up for October. And of course, the Octoberthon, if you weren't aware, we do a bunch of episodes in October. Instead of doing 1 a week, sometimes we do 2. It just kind of depends on schedules and stuff. This week ended up in 2 because of the 2 releases. But in October, we're doing like 4 a week, to maybe sometimes 5, depending. So look forward to that, and you can get a bunch of different episodes. There's some classics coming up. There's some fun B movies coming up. There's a bunch of different things. And of course, later in the month, when Tim gets back from his marriage/honeymoon, are you going on a honeymoon? I can't remember.
Not right away.
Not right away. Okay.
We'll be taking we're taking a trip in December, and then but that's more of a family thing. But then we'll probably have like a proper one some point next year.
You don't have to explain it to the audience. I was trying to remember if that was part of the vacation here, but no. So when Tim gets back,
I just wanna
let everyone know. Fill everyone in your plans.
Yeah.
When Tim gets back, though, of course, we've got the new Halloween movie in October to talk about. Plus, we'll be doing the Patreon picks, and we've got a couple of other things we want to plan in the last bit of October. Hopefully, a little countdown is on the cards. That's something we're hoping to do. So, but that's so October's coming up. It's exciting. Look forward to October, month of Halloween. It is horror Christmas. So let's treat it as such.
And not just with like us, watching movies and stuff. Like, I think it'd be fun if people like let us know what they're watching. Like, you got the Twitter handle for the podcast, and our Twitter handles. Like, you can like reach out to us, but like,
well, you brought them up.
Just watch this, or
you brought them up, Tim. What is the Twitter handle? For the podcast?
Screams Midnight, I think.
Yes, at Screams Midnight.
Right.
For the Twitter, yes. And you get me on Twitter at Wibble89, and you get Tim at Tim Virgulish. But that is us. Like, subscribe, rate us on the iTunes or your podcast app of choice, and highly, of course. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we'll see you next time.